Well, everyone, the iPad second generation is one of the most interesting iPads of all time. It was a pretty big, impactful iPad, I would say, but is this iPad still worth buying in 2024? I think the answer is quite clear, but let's talk about it throughout this particular video. But if you want to pick up some iPads that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get that from there, and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPad second generation, this particular iPad on the front had a 9.7-inch IPS LCD panel. Now, this was coming off the heels of the iPad 1, so I have to be honest, the difference between the iPad 1 and the iPad 2, there was a pretty stark difference here. Like, Apple put in a lot of different things within that particular device, which was genuinely very, very surprising. And that in and of itself was a very, very important thing going on for this particular device, because if you were getting a newer phone or a newer iPad, you were definitely getting a very big upgrade with the iPad second generation. So for one, you were getting that front-facing camera, which was very nice to have, and that in and of itself was a very cool thing going on for this particular device. You were getting like pretty thick bezels all across the particular iPad, so that was something that was very, very cool and something that was very nice going on with this particular device. You had the home button up front, but it was a pretty thick amount of bezel, and compared to iPads nowadays, it is definitely an older type of iPad styling, but it was still like, nonetheless, it was still a very good looking iPad, and I still think it looks pretty good when it comes down to it. So this in and of itself on the front, I mean, the panel itself looked really nice, and I still think it looks like a very, very nice iPad. It just is a significantly older type of layout because it just doesn't look as good as like the latest generation. So that is kind of the big thing to kind of keep in mind there. Beyond that though, the rest of this iPad, I mean, it was a pretty thin iPad, curved side a little bit, which was actually pretty nice. And you were still maintaining a very, very good build quality on these types of iPads. And I don't think Apple's ever made like a cheap iPad now that I think about it. Now, on top of that, you are still maintaining a 30-pin connector at the bottom. So that is the oldest styling of like iPad charger or even iPhone charger Apple's ever made. Again, it's an older styling. I think we all kind of know Apple's moved on from this like twice. They released the Lightning, then they released USB-C. So this is a very, very old charging port, as we know now, but it's fine, it's whatever. You are getting a headphone jack on this particular iPad as well, which again is a very, very nice thing. On the back side, you're getting this whole entire like flat side. It's, very good feeling. It looks very good as well. Again, I don't have much to complain about here. You have the single camera setup on the top left corner. And I would probably say on the outside, for the most part, it is pretty much what you'd expect. It is a pretty old iPad. It's kind of what you'd expect in, the iPad nowadays, but it is what it is. And I think when you're buying an iPad of this age, you kind of know what you're getting. I kind of think that's like the best way to kind of describe it a little bit. So from that side, that kind of covers it up on the exterior. Now, the one thing I've kind of seen is from a price tag standpoint, you're kind of getting this interesting thing where this particular device, I mean, like, take it as you will, but it's just not an iPad I'd probably recommend the vast majority of people to buy. But the problem is that some people may get sucked in with that price tag. So some people may see that price and they might be like, oh, like it's still worth buying, or it's still a good iPad to purchase. For a vast majority of people, I don't necessarily think so. Like, I don't think this is necessarily a good iPad, and I keep saying necessarily, but I don't think it's a good iPad to buy. And that price tag can seem like it's a good price tag because it's, because it is that price. So I don't know what else to tell you, but I will tell you this. I don't think this is a good iPad to buy, and this is basically another example of it. It really isn't that good of a price, and that's just kind of what's going on with this particular phone, or this particular iPad. I keep saying phone. Now, in terms of the camera side of things, this is another interesting thing going on here. So on the back side, you're essentially getting, what you'd expect. It's like a VGA camera. It's like a 0.7 megapixel camera on the back and a VGA camera on the front. Now, that basically means that this camera is basically just a camera lens. Like, you are not really getting anything else associated with this particular device. Like, it is a very, very, very average camera, and that is kind of what's going on with this particular device. Like, if you're expecting to get this iPad and the camera to be amazing, that's not really the case. But I do think everyone kind of thinks that already. Like, if you're watching this video, you already made it this far, you are probably well aware that this iPad really isn't going to be performing that well from a camera side. And I do think that's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. Because as you're going through and as you're buying the next generation iPad, you probably want it to be a good performing iPad from a camera perspective. And just keep in mind that's not what's going on here. But that's totally okay, and that's totally what's expected, I would say, in my opinion. So from a lot of different areas, I will tell you from the price tag side, So I'd probably tell you from everything from the camera side, it really isn't that great, and I think a majority of people probably know that by now. So that kind of covers it up there. Now from the software side, this was also another somewhat complicated thing going on for this particular device as well. So with something like the iPad 2nd generation, the software of this phone is already done. Like, it's not really getting any more software updates. And that is kind of the problem that's kind of happening with this particular iPad, and I would say arguably that is probably the worst thing going on for this iPad. The performance and everything is also pretty bad too, but the software, like the fact that this thing is done getting software updates, I would say that's a pretty big problem. Like, you would want to have an update or have a software on your phone or your iPad that's going to be supported for a period of time, and that's not really what's going on here. Like, this iPad is pretty much already done getting software updates, and not only is it done getting software updates now, it's been done getting software updates for like 4 or 5 years from now. It's been like a long time. So my question is, why would you want to go and buy something that's already outdated? And that is what I just keep repeating in my head over and over and over again with these particular devices. And I know with the price tag and like the build quality, it can be kind of deceiving. But like I said, you are so much better off buying a device that's even like 3 years newer than this one. Like, this one is significantly older, and I really wouldn't recommend going down this direction. So if that wasn't enough to kind of convince you or sway you of why you shouldn't buy this iPad, I mean, the performance also really isn't that good at all. I mean, Apple A5 chip inside with 512 megabytes of RAM. That's half a gig. That is nothing, right? That is not that much anymore. And I feel like I'm going kind of hard, but it is like, I have to kind of make sure people make the right decision. And with this particular iPad, it really isn't that good of a performing device. I mean, once again, that's just kind of what's happening here. And when you are getting the iPad like an iPad 2nd generation, it's just a very outdated device. And I would hate to recommend an iPad to people that's already slow and it's already outdated. If you really needed to use this thing as just like a screen, like if you just need to go and just put like a photo mirror or something like that, like a photo album, like kind of screen thing, then I think this is probably okay. But if you're actually wanting to go ahead and use this thing on an everyday basis, this is not going to, to give you that good of an experience. It's going to give you a very, very washed out, very grainy, slow experience. And you deserve better than that. That's why I would always recommend buying an iPad that is still supported with software, because at least at the bare minimum, it still works. It's still, it's functional, and it's still going to be kind of giving you updates. And most iPads now that are supported with software are decent performing iPads. Even the lowest performing ones, like the iPad like 6 or 7, those ones still actually are pretty decent. So I look at those particular iPads, and I think those are very, very important ones as well. So to kind of sum up this entire video, and if I'm going to be honest with you, I definitely would tell you a device like the iPad 2nd generation, this is a device that I look at and I'm just like, it's it was a good device when it first came out, right? It was very impactful. I think it even had some issues when it first came out, but it was a very impactful device. And I think that was something that was very important. But you have to remember that with this particular device, you are going to be much better off if you buy something that's still supported with software, because you're already going to be getting a much better performing device too. Some things that this particular device is missing, it's missing things like, it's Apple Pencil support, any sort of nicer display like a ProMotion display, although this one's not that bad, software updates, performance updates, like the list goes on and on. There's a lot of stuff this iPad is missing that a lot of base model iPads have nowadays. So that's kind of what I recommend thinking about, right? Go ahead and buy something that's still supported. I wouldn't necessarily recommend buying this one. So that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.